So this morning's session starts out with a keynote speaker and by a very special guest. Many of you know or have heard of Petra Kaufmann, who's director of NCATS in the Office of Rare Disease Research. Her work includes overseeing the Rare Diseases Clinical Research Network Program and Genetic Rare Diseases Information Center and the NCATS Toolkit and patient-focused therapy development activity. Dr. Kaufmann focuses on engaging a broad range of rare disease research stakeholders to accelerate translation from discovery to healthcare benefits through the use of innovative methods and tools. Before joining NCATS at the NIH, Dr. Kaufmann was director of the Office of Clinical Research at the NIH Neurological Disorders and Strokes Center, where she worked with investigators to plan and execute a large portfolio of clinical research studies and trials in neurologic disorders, including many in rare diseases. She established NeuroNext, an innovative trial network for phase 2 trials using a central institutional review board, streamlined contracting, active patient participation in all project phases, and a scientific and legal framework for partnership with industry. Kaufmann also promoted data sharing, working with multiple stakeholders from the academic, patient organization, and industry sectors to develop data standards for more than 10 neurological diseases. A native of Germany, Petra earned her MD from the University of Bonn and her master's degree in biostatistics from Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health. She completed an internship in medicine at St. Luke's Roosevelt, now part of Mount Sinai in New York City, training in neurology and clinical neurophysiology at Columbia University, and then doing a postdoctoral fellowship in the molecular biology of mitochondrial diseases at Columbia's H. Houston Merritt Clinical Research Center for Muscular Dystrophy and Related Diseases. Before joining NINDS, Dr. Kaufmann was a tenured associate professor of neurology at Columbia, where she worked as a researcher and clinician in the neuromuscular division, the electromyography laboratories, and the pediatric neuromuscular clinic. Petra has served on scientific advisory boards and committees for many rare disease organizations and is a member of the American Academy of Neurology Science Committee, the International Rare Diseases Research Consortium, Interdisciplinary Science Committee, and the Clinical Trial Transformation Initiative Steering Committees. Dr. Kaufmann is board-certified in neurology, neuromuscular medicine, and electrodiagnostic medicine. She currently sees patients in the Muscular Dystrophy Association Clinic at Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. Obviously, Dr. Kaufmann is well suited to the work she's doing right now. We thank her for coming today and sharing with us some of her insights and plans. Dr. Kaufmann, would you please join us on the podium? Thank you for coming today.
Okay. So I want to thank you, Chad, for the kind introduction, and also want to let the organizers know how much I appreciate to be part of this wonderful meeting. It's been really beautiful to see the energy, and most importantly, to see how the different stakeholders, the researchers, the patient groups, and everybody comes together here. So it seems like a very exciting time in your field. And I have really nothing to disclose. I work for the NIH, as that's the topic of my presentation, and I will not discuss any experimental treatments today. I'm here really on behalf of the team in the Office of Rare Diseases Research, and I hope you know that we're all there for you. We work for you if you pay taxes in the United States, and we are there to help you. So please feel free to reach out at any time. I want in particular point out my deputy director, Dr. Ann Pariser, who we were able to recruit last year, because she has worked in rare diseases for many years, initially as a medical reviewer at the FDA in rare diseases, and then as the director of the Office of Rare Diseases in CEDAR, the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research at the FDA. So she is now with us at the NIH, and we all are there to help you. Please give us your feedback. Our contact information is on our website. So what do we do in the Office of Rare Diseases Research? We work to accelerate treatment to the benefit of patients living with rare diseases and their family. And the way we try to do this is by facilitating coordination with multiple stakeholders at the NIH itself. So many of our NIH friends and partners are here as well, because we work with them, because rare diseases are not just limited to one NIH institute or center, but they have often multiple organs involved, and they just require good coordination and collaboration. And there's, of course, many lessons learned from one field to the other. And we also reach out to the community, to the different stakeholders, patients, families, patient groups, scientists, all stakeholders in the field, because this is really, I think, what it takes. As you know, this is an unprecedented time, and I just see the vibrancy at this meeting and the many treatments that are now already a reality or are on the horizon. I imagine, for example, congratulations, by the way, you know, when you started, it was a whole different world. So what an exciting time this is, and I think our challenge right now is, and in a way the call to action is, to make sure that we do not leave any disease, any patient behind. So how can we make sure that everybody can benefit from these amazing advances in our understanding of disease, and also from the technologies that are now emerging that are not just making a little difference, which is great also, but that are often really transformative. So thank you for the long introduction, but you know everything about me. So I've been taking care of patients with neurological disorders for many years. And for too many of these years, it has been getting to know the families and the patients and seeing them in clinic and becoming their advocate and helping them live with the disease. But the prescription pad, in my case, sadly, has been used a lot of times just for things that help people live the best quality of life they can, or prescribe prednisone. But there wasn't really, for a long time, anything that I could really see made a difference in the way people felt from visit to visit. And now it's so gratifying to see that we actually have the opportunity to make a big difference and that people actually get better. I was at a neurology meeting recently where somebody said it's not your grandparents' neurology anymore. And that's probably true for other specialties as well. I just happen to be a neurologist. It's really, the world has changed, and I'm so excited to be here and be part of it. And that's, I think, what we need to try to do and help all of you from our role at the NIH to make sure that we can accelerate the process, that we can get to everybody who can benefit from these transformative treatments. So one question that people frequently ask us is, so who do you actually work for? So it's everybody who has a condition that affects less than 200,000 Americans. And in other regions of the world, I realize this is an international meeting, in Europe, for example, the definition is not an absolute number, but a relative number, but it comes out to sort of a similar prevalence of a disease. But we have to realize that many rare diseases are even much more rare in a way and affect only a few hundred or a few thousand people. And I get to what that means in terms of what we have to do to be really successful in getting good research and impact off the ground towards treatment. As you have heard, probably there is overall thousands of diseases, and the number is increasing as we understand more about genetics. And even though each rare disease I just told you has a relatively low number of Americans, in the aggregate, it's actually over 25 million people. Now, if you think about this, that's about 1 in 8 Americans. Oh, okay. I thought I'm doing something wrong. No, so it's about, so in the aggregate, it's over 25 million people. It's 1 in 8 Americans, and if you think about this is more people than I think in the state of Texas or in the whole state of Florida. So it's not actually, a small number at all. So that's really an important concept to keep in mind, that there is a significant public health burden, and that it's actually more people in the aggregate that live with rare diseases than that have cancer at any given time. So it's a very significant public health problem, and over half of all rare diseases affect children. Most of them are life-threatening or severely affecting people's lives, and only 5% or less actually have an effective treatment. So there's a lot of work to do, a lot of great opportunity, And we've been fortunate that there has been a lot of momentum, of course, as you've all seen in your own field, in the last 20 years, starting with, and I get to that a little bit, some really great legislation that helped move things forward. So this is just a little bit of an overview of what stems from some of the things I just reviewed for you that you are very well aware, I'm sure. And I'll go just sort of in clockwise here. The number of patients in each condition can be relatively small. Still, many diseases are not fully understood. There's a lot of work still to be done. We just heard a great morning session about some successes in trial design, but it turns out even if we think we understand the disease, there still needs to be pilot data, there still needs to be good natural history data when it actually comes to testing a treatment. There's often a lot of phenotypic variability, so we're stuck between including everybody in a trial because there's just not a lot of people in a given place at a given time, but then we have this diversity. Patients are dispersed. There's also not oftentimes enough disease experts. That's why this is so terrific to see really everybody come together. And there's often also little trial precedent, so many people have to be trailblazers and really be the first ones to figure everything out. So the more we can share and learn from each other and figure out how we can have solutions that go across just one disease, I think the better off we are. And so the bottom line is, I think, what we are working towards and what we want to help the community with is collaboration. We think that is key to make a difference here, given all these challenges. If we don't really look at things together as a group and figure out how we can share lessons learned, infrastructure, data, then I think we will not really get to the long tail of the many, many rare diseases and the many people, the many families that are waiting for us to make a difference for them. And that brings me to the third important point. Patient involvement is a must-have. And these are really the three takeaway messages, and I'll come back to that. And I'll just tell you now a little bit about what we do at the NIH to try to work towards that. So I told you that there has been, and this is busy, you don't have to read it all, but there has been really great progress. You see that in your own field. And in part, this comes actually out of Washington. Some useful things come out of Washington. And it started with the Orphan Drug Act in 1983 that led to a national commission recognizing the need for better support for rare diseases. And that was actually led by Steve Groft, who is here and who will chair one of the trial sessions tomorrow, I think. And he became then the director of the Office of Rare Diseases, which resulted from this legislation. Another key milestone that I'm sure you're all aware of is the Rare Diseases Act, which then led to the Office of Rare Diseases becoming the Office of Rare Diseases Research, which again Steve led so ably until his retirement, official retirement, at least in 2014, but also led to the establishment through that act of the Rare Diseases Clinical Research Networks, which we are so impressed by the success of that collaboration for, in particular, lysosomal storage disease, as well as the Genetics and Rare Diseases Information Center. I'll tell you more about that. And then just to highlight another milestone here, there's a report on rare diseases that I think was a really good roadmap. And then also an international consortium was started. And this is something, since rare diseases are a global burden, there are people here from all over the world, I'm sure, very important. This is a consortium of research funders who team up to streamline rare diseases research and help people work with high impact across all the different regions, legislations, regulatory environments. The Rare Diseases Research Network, and I come back to that as well, we're very excited, as you know, we'll have another cycle starting next year, so it'll be a great opportunity to continue support for rare diseases research for these really important collaborations and also take into account some of the great progress that has been made. So our activities in the Office of Rare Diseases Research falls into two major areas. One area has to do with sharing data and sharing information, and the other broad area has to do with collaborations. And I want to walk you through these different initiatives so that you can think about how you might be able to engage or how might they be helpful to you, and also so that you can let us know if you have other thoughts of what we should tackle or what we should include. So we are not known in the government for really catchy names, so I'm sorry I have to burden you with a lot of alphabet soup here. So ORDR is the Office of Rare Diseases Research, and then the first initiative has actually a pronounceable name. It's GARD, the Genetics and Rare Diseases Information Center. And this is something that was mandated by law, as you saw earlier, and was established following the Rare Diseases Act of 2002 to provide a centralized resource for high-quality information on rare diseases. And I was quite impressed myself to report to you that we now get over 1 million visits a month. That seems like a lot to me, but I'm not sure about any other statistics. But a lot of people reach out to us. They check online to get information on thousands of rare diseases that is being reviewed, updated, curated, and this is done in an ongoing collaboration with the National Institute for Human Genome Research and also Orphanet in Europe. So this is just a snapshot of this, and I wanted to point out to you that not only can you put in the name of a disease that you're interested in. So if you have, let's say, somebody reaches out to you and says that they have a family member or a friend with a rare disease, you could direct them to this just for some initial high-quality information. And they can not only get information online, but they could also call us and speak to a genetics counselor or myself if they can't answer the question, or some of my colleagues, as well as send us emails. So we do a lot of answering emails, trying to help people out, trying to find where they should go next. So that's a service we provide, and the website is there. Here's an example. This happens to be one of the diseases I'm working on. So you see here how there is some information with references, with links, and there is also, for each disease, addresses, phone numbers, and websites for support groups or any other relevant organization. And check it out for your disease, and if you have any additional information that we are missing, we'd be delighted to update it and include it there. Let us know. Now coming, again, staying on the same side, what do we do in terms of disseminating information, helping people with data sharing? I want to talk to you about registries. So registries are obviously so important. Every patient group knows that's the building block, but yet they are so challenging. It's hard to know how to get started. The technology is changing so much, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's ended up being a very common question, I think, that we had. How can we do a registry? So before I even got to this place, an initiative that was started by Steve and others at the time called the Global Rare Diseases Research Initiative, and they had a couple of phases. They worked first on some demonstration projects with a number of patient groups, and probably some of you are here, and they figured out that common data elements would be really important, informed consent templates, so that when you have a registry, you can actually use the information and not like unnecessarily restricted by too limited consent language. And then finally, they came up with something called a global unique identifier. And what that means is that sometimes patients participate in studies, or maybe in an online registry and in a clinical study, and they are the same person. So then we could falsely have duplicate cases, as we say in statistics. So we could have information count double, count twice on the same person. That would give you a wrong impression on what the disease actually is like, right? So in order to avoid that, but still make sure that people's privacy is protected, there is a way where you can come to the NIH and get from a server, and the technology is complicated, but essentially you get sort of like a hash, and then that allows people to link to make sure that they can identify duplicate cases without giving away the person's privacy or personal information. And then in another phase, they were trying to do mapping of data to sort of a standardized ontology, and all of this has been, I think, really helpful in showing that it's really challenging to create a scalable platform. There's a lot of post-processing necessary so that it would be easier to upstream use the standards and make sure that the data are in the right kind of format and shape in terms of making it sustainable. So that's kind of what came out of this. And in the next phase now, and you see it, all this, these results are on the website, so you can see there these global unique identifiers that you can access, the common data elements and informed consent templates. And we have also, in an attempt to make our acronyms more pronounceable, now call it RADAR for Rare Diseases Registry Initiative as opposed to GRDR. And in the next phase, we are working with our friends at another federal agency, AHRQ. And what they have, I don't know if you've noticed this, and this is actually some rare diseases patients or groups made us aware of this. They have a great manual on registries. That's an online textbook, if you wish. And we are now working with them to make that really applicable to rare diseases and make it also very user-friendly and kind of not just having it as static text, but making it so that you can sort of interact with it and download things. So we are hoping that this will be, it's a big project for this year, that will be maybe next year around this time, we'll have some really helpful tools for patients to download and patient groups to help them on their path towards really impactful registries, which is such a challenge and yet such an important first step. Finally, in this sort of bucket of data and information, I want to make you aware of the toolkit. That's relatively new. That's something we launched in September of 2017. And this came out of the recognition that a lot of patient groups were calling us and saying, you know, we were just diagnosed, we raised some money, and we want to start a trial. How do we do this? So, you know, we all spend a lot of time, which we love to do, talking to people and giving them sort of customized advice, I guess, that we hope will help them get on the right track or refer them to the right people. And also a lot of time we made connections between patient groups because we said, you know, there's somebody who just figured this out. Why didn't you talk to this person? And then when I talked to people in different patient groups, they said, you know, that's actually really true. There's a lot of knowledge out there, a lot of tools out there, a lot of resources out there, but we're having a little bit of a hard time sometimes finding them and connecting people with the right resources and understanding which resource is right at which stage. So we ended up inviting some of the patient groups that have more experience, that were in the same situation with us, that were giving out a lot of advice on these things, and said, let's organize all this material out there. So we developed this toolkit that is really supposed to help patient groups engage with the therapy development process. So if you want to accelerate the process, here are some tools. So it's not recreating the wheel or making up new things, but it's really just having a really easy one-stop online portal where all this information is organized. It was led by patient groups. It was about questions that patients asked us and asked each other. And it's really for the rare diseases community primarily, but the information is not necessarily useless for a common disease, so kind of everybody could use it. And every tool underwent sort of testing. Is it really useful, accessible, practical? And the reason why we wanted to offer this and we were asked to do this is because many patient groups said it's really kind of a tough uphill battle to learn about the R&D process. There's so many great citizen scientists, but getting there, it takes a long time. So how can we better learn from experienced groups? How can we facilitate really investing into high quality, impactful resources? And we launched this in September, and I'll show you a few screenshots. So it's organized by 4 topic areas. It's discovery, so what do you have to do as a patient group when you're in that early stage where you still try to understand what the disease looks like, what causes it, and get some kind of basic, more fundamental discovery research going. How do you engage with researchers, with others, other stakeholders? Then preparing for clinical trials, setting the stage, what has to be in place to set things up for successful trials, and that's of course where the sweet spot is for the RDCRNs, but here's sort of some more generic kind of things that should be in place and how to get there. Then what happens with clinical trials themselves and with the FDA review? As you know, many said there have been now patient groups in my area in muscular dystrophy, for example, that have really engaged and even helped with drafting guidance. So this is an important area. And then what also really came up is, which is great news, there's now, in many diseases, of course, the time after approval. And so what you have to consider there, what is important once the drug is approved for disease communities to consider. And you can find this organized in this way on this website. And if you click on a topic, for example, getting started, there's also like sort of some way of entering into this maze of information in a different way. So getting started, and then you get into this, and then you see, for example, learning about therapy development. And then there's these different questions there for you, what you might want to know, building relationships. So we really listen to the patient groups in terms of what was important to them. And I'm giving you an example here. So this is like, how do I begin? And then you get here the different resources that are out there, and there's a brief description, and then there's a tool. So it's really only meant for people who are looking for information that they don't have to just Google it, but can get a little bit of sort of curated ways of getting to the information. Then, for example, just picking one, steps to nonprofit formation, and then if you look here, you get to the NORD document. So it just leads you to the right kind of place, depending on what it is that you want to do. So here's another example. So you see kind of where this is going. So I invite you to check this out and tell others about it. And please let us know if you have any feedback, how we can improve this. And also if you see something missing, if you are aware of something that was very helpful to your organization, please let us know, and we'd be glad to include it, because this is sort of like a living document. And we had a meeting where we then used, so this is sort of one way to help patient groups engage with the therapy development process. But we also have meetings and webinars where we then kind of talk through sort of use cases, so people who have a particular roadblock come and want to discuss it, and then we have sort of experts like peers giving them advice. So we're hoping that this will help kind of lift all boats. This particular community has a lot of success stories. Fortunately, there's other rare diseases areas that are a little bit behind, and that can certainly benefit from sharing this kind of knowledge, the resources, and the information. So now moving over to sort of the other bucket of activities that we're pursuing in the Office of Rare Diseases Research, and these are to foster collaboration. And there is the Rare Diseases Clinical Research Network that you are probably all familiar with. So they came out of the legislative requirement to establish centers of excellence for rare diseases grouped around therapeutic areas. And there are, in the Rare Diseases Clinical Research Network, implemented in these consortia, where physicians, scientists, and multidisciplinary teams, and very importantly, patient groups, work together to address a set of rare diseases. So initially, when it started, there were 5-year awards, and then as always at the NIH, and that led to another cycle, and we now have 21 consortia and 1 data management and clinical coordinating center. And this is very important, because this is the way how there is some harmonization, some sharing of information, of practices, of protocols, and ultimately there is some leverage of experience and investment. Because, as I pointed out in the beginning, if you have thousands of rare diseases, if everybody does things one-off, as a society, as mankind, we'll just never be able to get where we want to be, where we can make this success a reality for all patients. It's possible scientifically, but how do we actually make it happen? So the criteria for these consortia are that they have to focus on 3 or more diseases. And I know this is a particularly rich group here that you kind of keep together and that you had heard so masterfully, because it's a number of diseases and some of them quite rare. There's always multiple centers, and many times they are actually international, right? Because it's just not just a US issue, and it has to lead to international collaboration. And we work just as the coordinator and provide all the funding we can for it, but we very much appreciate and rely upon the partnership that we enjoy with our friends at the other NIH institutes and centers. Each of these consortia has to have at least 1 patient advocacy group and has to conduct at least a couple of studies, of course, and also, very importantly, has to focus on training the next generation of researchers. That's the investment in the future, and that's what will really make a difference going forward. in terms of the continued success and progress for rare diseases to have a lot of people come after the current leaders who can take the success, build on it, and invest their time and their life's work in helping people with rare diseases. So the program is considered very successful at the NIH. There is, in the aggregate, all the different consortia together have about 200 diseases that they work on. There's several hundred centers, and they're actually worldwide, not only in the United States. 100 active protocols, over 40,000 patients have been enrolled. Seems a staggering number, and many people trained. And very importantly, over 100 patient groups are actively involved in this. And I'm delighted to share with you that we have green light at the NIH to go ahead with the next cycle, which, as you know, we are planning for next year. And again, since it's a good program, the main makeup remains with these consortia and then a centralized data and coordinating center. And we also, and I can share this with you because it was recently discussed in January at the open session of our NCATS Council, we realized that and were told that there is a great need in diseases maybe that are not quite in the RDCRN or where the RDCRN doesn't quite provide the sufficient framework. There's a great need for more natural history data, and natural history data that are really setting the stage for successful trials, so trial readiness. And so we have, in our open session of our January council, obtained approval to move forward with sort of another piece in this suite of rare diseases support that we aim to provide along with our NIH partners for smaller, not like whole consortia, but smaller specific studies. So please stay tuned and look out for that. That is coming up. So this is busy, but just to show you how this all comes together. So the Data and Management Coordinating Center, DMCC, the patient advocacy groups that form a coalition, the CPAC, and then the Office of Rare Diseases Research at the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, or NCATS, work together with our NIH partners. And you can see here that we are very fortunate to have over 9 other institutes of centers, or 10 maybe, at the NIH be our partners, and that's very important. And together, it's our privilege to work with really wonderful investigators and patient groups on all these different disease areas. And of course, here we are focused on lysosomal storage diseases, and led by Chad Whitley, we have, as you know, really a lot of success over the years with many diseases being studied and a large number of research studies that I couldn't even all list here. I was talking to Dan Tagley, my colleague, just earlier about how this all started and what a difference it is. He tells me that there were maybe 40 people at the initial meeting, so I want to applaud you. I mean, you've really come a long way, and it's wonderful to see. And again, we appreciate the partnership of our colleagues at the NIH, at the National Institute for Diabetes, Digestive Diseases and Kidney Diseases, and the National Institute for Neurological Disorders and Stroke. So just briefly, in the last couple of minutes I have, I want to just make you aware of another program at the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences. There's not one in my area, but just to be aware of. This is in the intramural part of the organization, where investigators stand ready to partner with extramural collaborators to help in rare and neglected diseases to get over particular bottlenecks in the development. That's more in the preclinical arena, just for you to be aware, and more information is available on our website. This is a model that provides essentially collaboration opportunities. There's no funding like we have in the Office of Rare Diseases Research, but more in-kind collaborations and support and access to tools and resources. So to finish here, what are the 3 key points? Well, the first point I just wanted to leave you with is that there's unprecedented opportunity. I mean, I don't have to tell you just in 2017 what we have seen in terms of approvals for cell-based therapy, for gene replacement therapy, so and also use of artificial intelligence, of new data technologies. There is such great opportunity, and I hope we can work together to make sure that no disease, no patient is left behind, that we can make sure that this possibility, this real possibility, becomes a reality for as many patients as possible and in the near future, so that they don't have to wait, because there's great need. The second key takeaway message is that we have to collaborate. You see the magnitude of the opportunity. So if everybody does this alone, it will not happen. So we are here to help, do whatever it takes to foster and promote such collaborations. There have to be good handoffs between patient groups, investigators, industry. There have to be strong collaborations and the sharing of resources and data. And then just finishing up by telling you that it's all about patients. So many patients waiting for us to help them. We need to make sure that they're actively engaged in our work so that the questions we ask matter, the protocols are not too burdensome, and the differences we aim for are meaningful for our patients. Just a brief note that we have a workshop on gene therapies planned for September 10 and 11, 2018, together with CBER, the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research at the FDA. And the goals here are to review the state-of-the-art of gene therapy approaches, to identify challenges and strategies, and to figure out, again, coming back to this point, how can we make sure that we collaboratively make this a scalable and sustainable endeavor. And my last shout out is for Rare Diseases Day at the NIH. If you can't come to Bethesda, Maryland, where this amazing event will take place, you can follow it on our webinar, and you can look on our website how you can register for that. So we hope you'll all participate in Rare Diseases Day this year. And I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, for your attention, and invite you to look for more information on our website or come up to me and talk to me later. Thank you.